Hello, we're here for episode 140 of live drawing. We'll wait to see who pops in before we go too far down the road of talking about the show and working on stuff. Hey, Martha's, we're doing okay. It's a stressful day, but we're hanging in there. How are you today? Got a prelim there. Tonight we'll do a recap of the show I was just at, which was the Little Giants comic show. This is the program that they give out. This is their logo and character. It's run by a gentleman named Jason Brodnick. He has a Little Giants comic store and collectibles store up in New Hampshire. He's been doing this show a number of years now, and it's all comics and artwork. Allergies, yeah, I understand that. It's definitely that season. Yeah, you can see that they have. Here's the floor plan. You can see my silly little name right there. I was next to Buzz, and yeah, I saw my and Joe St. Pierre was on the other side. I saw my friends Joe and uh, Jay Kennedy was there. My friend Allison, who has been on the stream and has popped in a couple of times recently, was there as well. So um, tons of awesome dealers, tons of great comics. I'll share some of the artwork and stuff that I got, and it's one of the things that I love about this. And some people are like, the biggest show ever is the best show, and I disagree. Like, this show is curated rather than just blown out, and he just has awesome vendors and really good artists, and it's one floor. So like everything is all on this one floor, and around the outside are all the creators, and then there's like the food over here, and on the inside you have the dealers. And what's great about it is if you're a person who's like a buyer collector, you can get to almost everything in that one day, and you can feel like you got to look through some boxes, dig through some stuff, and you can find amazing stuff. Like, I had never seen it before in person. I saw the first appearance of Daffy Duck. I'm not a duck guy, but like, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen Action Comics #1 many times. I've seen Detective 27s. I've seen all the Silver Age key books and most of the Golden Age key books, but I had never seen the first appearance of Donald Duck, and it was in great shape. It was just at the back wall of this one dealer, and there was the first. I don't think the first issue of Marvel Comics was there, but I saw early detectives. I saw like just crazy stuff. Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, I was just sharing some of the crazy books I saw over the weekend. I actually saw the first appearance of Donald Duck. I'd never seen that book before. It's a rare golden age book. Heritage was there. They had some beautiful artwork and comics. There are certain books that I look for when I'm at a convention, and it kind of tells you what the dealers think that is coming through the door, and it was really cool to see. But sold stuff, signed a lot of stuff. I'll share the books and stuff that I got as the evening progresses, and we'll get some work done. So I was working on this panel down here. Right here, you can see the correlator has fled the scene. He's gotten into the escape hatch with. He sees that Jan and Feathers are alive, even though the mop and bucket just blew up. He thinks that they somehow miraculously escaped. And this middle panel here is where he's like, "Oh my God, you're alive!" And then this panel here, they're talking, and then he's like, "I have a plan for Undersea Hero," and then he turns around and he sees all the money that's in the boat. And that's because Jan and Feathers had just successfully robbed the undersea casino. So, and he's like, "Where'd all this money come from?" I thought that would be a nice little, and we don't have to explain where it came from because the reader knows, and the correlator doesn't need to know. But it's a really great one-day show. You can see everything that's there. They have really great creators. I got to meet Rick Parker, who's a letterer and a cartoonist of his own right. He did a lot of the kids' comics at Marvel in the '90s and the '80s. He did like the Beavis and Butthead books. He did Ewoks. He did all kinds of stuff. And he has a new graphic novel out, which I'll show off in a little bit. I just want to try to get this face down. And Jonathan, you were right. It is that show, that Wicked Comic Con is the following weekend. I thought it was this weekend, but alas. So if you would like to meet up for a beverage, I am down. Oh, and it's with it being an old school comic show, you're going to see a lot of artists that produce their own books and have worked on other books. Like, I'll show off the artwork I got. It's usually like what gets people. I got a sketch from my pal Jay Kennedy. This is a piece. I asked him to draw the Hobbit and Gandalf from like the '70s Rankin Bass cartoons. So, I thought that came out real nice. Yeah, it's a 9 by 12 ink with wash, a little bit of graphite, and yeah, I dig it. I dig it. And then I had this piece beforehand. I don't think I showed it off. I got it in Baltimore, but the artist of it was there. So this is a strip, a daily strip from The Phantom, and Keith Williams was the artist on it, and he was there, and I got to talk to him. I've met him a bunch of times before, but I just always forgot to bring this with me. And this was actually early on in his time, and this was one of the. He was happy to see it, surprised to see it, and he was happy to sign it for me. And I can put this back up where it lives and be able to see it every day. So that was pretty cool. When I got this down in Baltimore, he was charging. This was not from Keith. This was from a dealer. I think this was $40 or $50. Anything with the Phantom in it was like 150. But I just thought, I like the artistry. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the layout. I'm looking at the establishing shot. This lady with the cool hat. Um, the storytelling progression. The only thing that's a little weird storytelling wise for me is that the line of action goes down and then it comes back up a little bit just because where the horizon lines are. That's the only thing that's a little weird to me, but I'm sure if I read it in context of the other two strips that, Keith knows what he's doing. So I'm sure it would make sense, or whatever the next panel is where it's leading me to, because she's obviously walking like to the back of this establishment. So, uh, but I love it. I love it. And the last piece of art I got, not at the show, but I actually got it on eBay, and it's another piece that coincidentally Keith Williams ended up working on. It's a Ron Friends page because I just saw it on eBay and it was too cheap to pass on. As somebody who is a fan of the '90s Thunderstrike, um, I've been looking for a page I could afford for a long time, and I was able to pull this one off with a very, very low bid. If you're not a super picky art collector, if you're like someone who looks for artists or maybe genre or series or whatever, instead of like I got to have Spider-Man fighting Venom or whatever, like the big ticket items. I look for artists, and this is a rare instance where I was also looking for a character. And if you look online right now, a Thunderstrike page is going to cost you an arm and a leg. This I got for cheaper than what it says in that corner. I got this for half of that. I got this for like $100. Um, and this was published in a book called it was a one shot that they did that had a Simonson cover. They did a throwback story. They did all kinds of stuff, and it was just an anthology. But Eric Masterson, character I always liked as a kid. Very underrated run of comics when he was Thor. I always say that the Thor comics gave a god's vision of Earth, but the Eric Masterson run gave um, a man's vision of the heavens, which I always thought that was um, more interesting. So. I guess next I'll show you the books I got. Anybody who knows me, I go for artwork and cheap comics. So we found plenty of cheap comics. We got, I think these were $1. New Mutants of the 80s. Green Lantern Quarterly, drawn by Kurt Jervinian, who I think is a very underrated artist. I got some, I've been putting this run together. This is the Mark Waid, Ron Garney run of Captain America. This is the last issue, and then this is like the first issue of the last arc before they canceled the book and relaunched it with Liefeld. I've read them, I just didn't own them. But I think Ron Garney's just a terrific, terrific artist. You can just see how great his panel layouts are and the way he draws character. The way he draws action is just spectacular. Yeah. Love when I find Ron on a book. This was a Paul Ryan Avengers with John Byrne cover. A couple issues of Ghost Rider. This was great, A Mystery in Space, and this has these were an anthology. It's like Tom Sutton did one story, and Alan Weiss, inked by Terry Austin at the same time he was doing X-Men on the inside. So like it's fascinating. Fascinating, that stuff. Because you can see the little bits, like the style, the technique that you would see on those, the same pages that he was doing over John Byrne over on X-Men being applied to Alan Weiss, who like was another guy who came through continuity and has those Neil Adams influences. And then the last two are by Trevor Von Eeden, inked by Bob Smith, which was very cool. And then a Jerry Bingham inking himself. I got some Gold Key books. I think these were $2 or $3 a piece. The painted covers. First issue of All-Star Western. Some of the weird Star Trek comics. Another Flash Gordon. Got a Charlton Tarzan that I didn't have. This is Joe St. Pierre's new book, New Zodiac's Pisces, and I haven't read it yet, but it looks beautiful. You can go over to Astronaut Inc. or newzodiacs.com and check out his stuff. Another Flash Gordon. People know I love my Charltons. I haven't read this one. It was half off. This was the book I got signed by Rick Parker. He did a story in this that he penciled and inked. I'm a big fan of this series because it's just goofy, fun stuff. And then this is his new graphic novel that he did. And I bought this at the end of the day. He wouldn't let me pay him to sign the book because he charges for signatures. So I bought a book off of him and he signed it, to me. Best wishes. But this is about his life being grafted and going through boot camp. And it looks great. It was put out by Abrams Books. So you'll be able to find that in a bookstore. But those were my pickups. You did hear Liefeld's name. I was referring to it as because these were the last Captain Americas before they relaunched into Heroes Reborn, that series. So those were my pickups. I didn't post any of the sketches I drew. I did take pictures of them, so I can post those after the stream or whatever. But we'll get back to work. How many pages do I have left? 54. I think I have 5 pages left. 5 pages. because I got to go back and redo a couple earlier ones. I'm including those in that. So once that's done, I met with Jesse, who was on the Kickstarter as one of the flatters. He's ready to go. He actually just got a new pair of glasses, and I'm going to see him at CodCon, which is in Hyannis, the day after Free Comic Book Day. So if we can get some sample pages together and printed and stuff, that's what I'd love to do, and have those. So if anybody comes to visit me or Jesse at the show, they can take a peek at fully colored, lettered, everything pages. So that's what I would like to do. And we get to that point. Oh yeah, Jonathan, I love those weird Star Trek comics. Like, they're not the only thing that they're like the TV show in is that they have the names of the same characters and they kind of look like the actors, but those are like fantasy comics. Like, they're on other planets in chariots fighting giant monsters and stuff. Those Gold Key comics get wacky, and I am here for it. And they're, I honestly, I probably spent at the show in its entirety like $60. Um, it was I don't have a lot of disposable income, and I had just bought that page of Ron Friend's art. Um, so it was not a big spender, but there was gorgeous books. Like I said, the first Donald Duck was there. All the early, like, any Silver Age first appearance you wanted, including Amazing Fantasy 15, it was there. Like, you could walk in if you had the money and buy these books. A lot of rare early Golden Age horror stuff. Really, just like, it's one of those shows. Like, and then there was good cheap stuff, like I just showed you, and there was more stuff in those. I bought all of those from two booths that were like near where my table was, because most of the time I spent away from my table, I spent catching up with people I hadn't seen, like getting to see my friend Chris Campana for the first time in a long time. I think since Baltimore last year. It was really nice, and seeing Joe and seeing Alex Cormack, really talented guy that I've followed his career. I would say that we are the definition of contemporaries, because, like, during all those early portfolio reviews, when Marvel would come by or any of the companies, it was always him, myself, Ben Bishop, Woodall to an extent. But really, when I think about the Boston scene at that time, for people who were looking to get work for hire, it was really those three or four of us that I think about as far as being like our graduating class, I guess, of comic book artists in that area at that time. Oh yeah, one of those that Jonathan, was this one, as far as the funky covers go. I just saw these monsters over here, and I was like, I have to read this. Like, I don't like. There's this weird giant bird attacking. There's the only Star Trek on this cover is this little photo that was like pasted in here. Like, that's not a crewman. That's not a red shirt. But apparently they're saying it's Scotty, but it's not. When you flip it open and you check it out, like, you get the opening scene on the vessel, but then it turns into just like fantasy comic. Monsters, more monsters, yeah. Fighting in what is this? Who is this guy? He's wearing a beret and a striped shirt. I don't know what's going on, but it's going to be entertaining. One of the cool new features on Restream is I can see how many people are on each of the platforms, which is cool now, because before I could only see the total number, and it wasn't until after that I could see who was on what platform. Uh, and actually, I would say that Facebook and YouTube, like, YouTube has kind of caught up to Facebook as far as viewers go. Um, and then on the thing is like Twitch, that one, sometimes it only says like one for the whole time, but then when I go over to Twitch, it'll show me that how many views it got, and it'll be like thousands of views, but they only watched for like a minute or less or whatever. So I don't know if it ends up in like a some sort of a, what would you call it, algorithm for people. Like I end up being like one of those recommended videos or something. But it was good getting up to New Hampshire, and from a business standpoint, there's no sales tax in New Hampshire, so I just have to declare the income, and it's not so bad. One of the things I am doing, I am working on like trying to better systemize my stuff like that. So I had a couple of people ask me if I could mail them the Baltimore Tick Book. I'm just not, until Undersea Hero is done. I'm not opening my store and for any sort of sales. So when this is done, then I'll be able to commit time to shipping things or what have you. Gotta have the seashell right there, big seashell. Giving some thought to the public domain thing. Cool. Yeah, and I've got a couple more friends that I talked to that said that they might be willing to do a little short for us. So stay tuned on that one, and we'll probably coordinate that on my website, um, on that message board that I've been working on over there. Yeah, when we get going, there's actually a couple of really good online resources for reading Golden Age comics, and you know, anybody who's pitching a story of an established character, it can't just be generic character cosplaying as that IP. Like there has to be some research. The first time I did any of the characters I've worked on, there was research involved, even if it was just for a cover. Like I always spend time. Seeing what's going on in the book, or if it's for a new book, I see what they've released as far as the press releases go or the press kits, what they have on their websites, what they're saying about it. There's always research that can be done. This is actually a different pencil. I haven't used this one in a long time. It's a smaller lead. It's actually a 0.3. I don't like to use it on big drawings, but on these little panels, it comes in handy, especially with all the little details and stuff. Yeah, I don't use it very often. One of the reasons I was late is I had to make my tea. Today was a stressful day. We had to do some active shooter training at the day job stuff, which that was more stressful than I expected. Anytime you steal money in one of the comics, you have to put the dollar sign on the bag. Otherwise, anything could be in there if you don't put the dollar sign on there. How do we handle the stereotypes? I generally, when I've worked in these, like if it's a stereotype, I will, I will make adjustments. Like I will not draw that stuff. As far as like a character like the Claw, we did it. We used that character in Dimebox comics. So what we did was we turned him into an alien, and we just made him more alien-like instead of like just the caricature of the Axis caricature, the propaganda caricature that he was absolutely designed to be. You know, and it varies from character to character. Like Black Cat, I mean, her iconic look is the Joe Kubert one. So that's the one that, if I were handling that character, I would go in that direction. Where she's got the little motorcycle, she's got the mask, and it's basically like a regular one piece swimsuit and boots and gloves. I think it's blue. I'm not sure. Here's our light source. So I'm just trying to stay true to that. I understand, but I would avoid using that stuff like in whichever literary or design way that you can do so. Um, like those are the types of changes that I think are appropriate to a character or an IP usage. Like even with the Golden Age Blue Beetle, I would go all the way back to the original and make the choice to use the Formula 13 or whatever it is that gave him powers temporarily instead of the Egyptian mysticism trope that was used by Charlton sometime later. The original one, he was a cop, and then he became a robot in the Charlton stuff. So that's just how I would handle it. And I would, as probably the editor of this thing, I would probably recommend that you go that route. And I think when I published Dimebox, yeah, I mean, I think you can do a new story without like using that stuff, like just in general. Like, and we can talk about it offline. We don't have to do it here, but it's just like, if you want some script notes or something. I mean, if you don't want them from me, I can talk to one of my writer pals. Maybe Jeff McClellan, who also teaches writing, could offer some advice. He's a terrific writer. I worked with him on the Tick for 10 years, and we've done a ton of other stuff together. So I trust him implicitly with any sort of storytelling and creative approach. And that's another thing. Like we haven't really even set up what it's going to be, and there's people on the stream and people who are my friends that aren't artists, and we'd pair them up. We could do any number of things with that. Exactly, exactly. That's a very good way to approach that sort of thing. Where learning the error of their ways would be a good lesson to show. Everybody makes creative choices on stuff, and you know, we're not making a book as if it was published, 40 years ago. Like we would have to have we would all have to be drinking by noon. Cigars would be required. There'd need to be some mob element. Yes, there would also need to be that. One of the but of course, early days of comic stories is that the two gentlemen that started Charlton Comics back in the day met in prison. Santangelo, and I can't remember the other guy's name. It was not Charlton, no. Charlton was named after one of the owner's sons. I don't remember which one, but and Santangelo was the owner until it shuttered, I think. We'll do a Charlton Comics theme stream at some point. Maybe I could even get somebody who worked at Charlton to join us. That would be a fun thing to do. My buddy Mike Vosberg worked at Charlton briefly, not for very long, and did a number of stories there. And I'll see if I can twist his arm into coming on and saying hi for one of these, maybe. TC Ford also worked at Charlton. Um, I doubt I could ever get Joe Staten on that here, but I just don't know him well enough. He's super super kind person, but like complete stranger asking like, "Hey, do you want to come on this drawing stream and talk about working for Charlton?" I can't imagine he'd be like, "Sure, stranger." Maybe it would. I don't know. Maybe he's that nice. I don't know. That'd be crazy. That was dumb. Trying to use a tiny pencil to fill in. Sometimes these little panels take longer than the big panels. We gotta draw the rest of the ship in here. Probably gotta get our ruler out for that stuff. Maybe we can just rough it in, and then I'll fix it up when I'm doing the inks. Tonight's tea is just a nice stash herbal licorice spice. Well, I think that's a fun way to do it, and actually, it reminds me of Mike Vosberg. Again, I was bringing him up because he did a series called Lori Lovecraft, and that was his creator-owned book that he did for many years. Even to this day, I think he still does new stories with her. Um, and because he was working in Hollywood, he decided to do like a supernatural Hollywood story. Um, She's like a witch or like a necromancer, and she's also like a B movie actress. When I was in college, I did a strip about a B movie actress called In the Can. My buddy Nate did a variant piece for me on that one. I had anticipated doing a comic of that at some point, but to me, the material was just too juvenile to even. It was even more juvenile than Undersea Hero, and not in an endearing way. This is Jana War's hair. And I think we would want to see her hands, right? I think that would make it more believable. Sticking out on the sides. It was a great show. It really was. I'd go there just to shop, honestly. Like, and there's another convention coming up, Wicked Comic Con, that I'm gonna hop on the train and just go and hang out. I probably would get more work done hanging out than when I was doing sketches. But I'll post the sketches probably tomorrow, actually, just because I'm so tired. Long day, man. But I hope everybody else is doing okay. We made it to Wednesday. It's halfway through the week. For some people, they're able to make it to the comic store and get their new issues today. I don't go on Wednesdays. Haven't in a long time, and I've got this giant stack of fun comics to read. I loved reading that Mystery in Space. Seeing Terry Austin in the at that time period inking other artists and just seeing how it looks is such a fun thing, because that era of John Byrne X-Men is just so indulged into my memory, and like the work was just so stellar, and I just love seeing his work over other artists. Like, see, I'd never seen him ink Alan Weiss before, and it's just such an interesting pairing because I know their work both so well. Once a month, is that usually? Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I mean, you're still going in time to pick up all the new issues that would come out that month. Going every week is a lot. Like, that is Wednesday Warrior stuff. I did have people come up to the table and just asking about Undersea Hero, and I brought pages that they could check out. And I did 2 sketches of Undersea Hero for people, and that felt really good. I gotta say, that was really a nice thing to have someone ask me to draw my own character instead of just drawing, draw me Deadpool or something, you know. I actually have fun drawing characters that I worked on before. I did a Casey Jones. I did a Ninja Turtles piece for somebody. I did the Tick, which I still to this day love to draw the Tick. So you have a pull list, yeah. I have a pull list too, but the guy that pulls my list isn't so good at pulling sometimes. He almost always forgets the second issue, which is so weird. Because we write down the books we want, and then he puts them into the computer, And then supposedly it should tell them, like, when the books show up, like, these are for these people. It never works out that way. I think I did say last week, I did make it up to the Quincy New England Comics the other day, a couple weeks ago now. And they got a new collection in. So if you're in the New England area, Tom's got some really good new stuff you can go check out, pick up some new stuff. I will be at the New England Comics in Brockton for Free Comic Book Day. If anyone would like to come and say hello, hang out, we'll do some sketches, we'll have some fun, probably go out for Vietnamese food afterwards. There's a couple of excellent Vietnamese places in the area. Hey, Michael, glad you could make it, man. Share his wonderful intro. Hope everyone's doing well, and if not, I hope things get better for you. What are you working on today? You working on pages? You doing pinups tonight? What are you doing? You're always working. I know you were working on a strip for a while. Oh, nice. Oh yeah, thank you, Mike. You should be the producer. Mumbling in my ear. You got to tell him to like and subscribe. And one of the things that I find so interesting about my analytics is I'm surprised at how many people watch it after it's live. Like they'll put it on, maybe they put it on in the background when they're working or whatever. I generally assume that most people come on because they want to hang out, ask questions, chat, talk about what comics they got this week, what art they're working on, projects they got coming out, life stuff, baseball stuff. We get some baseball talk in sometimes. Mike says he's back working on his book, had to take time off with helping with mother's health issues. Now I try to get it done at night. It sounds tough, man. I'm really happy you're here. Thanks for hanging out. I always love hearing from you and seeing you and checking out your work. So I hope everything goes well with all the stuff you're dealing with. Like you say, if it's not good now, I hope things get good for you soon. But we're all here drawing, which is cool. Oh, that's right. You said you saw a corner cutting video. They set up pages, shrunk them, thumbnailed, and inked right over the thumbnail, no pencils. Yeah, that's actually a method that goes back to a long time. I've used that myself in a deadline pinch. Um, and actually, I knew a guy named Marat Michaels who was an assistant for Extreme Studios, and then he became a full-fledged artist there, doing his own books, doing other series and stuff. But when he was first started working out there, that was one of the things that he did. Was he would blow up the pages, pre-digital on a Xerox machine, and then would lightbox the thumbnails, sometimes just directly with ink. Um, I don't like going that way because I don't get another chance to fix my mistakes. And that's why I'll draw like this, then I'll draw in blue, then I'll draw in pencil, and then I'll draw in ink. And even when you look at the ink drawing, you'll see like different decisions that get made throughout the process. And I have to try to make myself not redo them again when when I scan them all. Actually, I have to fix her teeth. Let's just don't look. But hey, if that method's helping you get your stuff done, then go for it. Yeah, I use that method. There was a book that never got released that I did. It was actually the third book I did for the Boston Red Sox, and maybe at some point I'll share like the promo art and I'll write a blog post about it or something. And it was actually we were planning on originally just doing another Wally comic, and that's why we set up the story the way we did. If you read Wally and Tessie, the comics we did, it was set up for a third issue. They find this key, stuff happens, yada, 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 next book. And then it would have been where that key, the door it opened, what that led to. But they called us up and they said, hey, we want you to turn one of our players into a superhero. And we did. And they needed it yesterday. So I did the whole thing digitally, and I was doing quick roughs, sending them the roughs, getting sign off on the roughs, and then just inking those and coloring directly on top of those. So Martha says they were blocking in full, pencil in full, and then inking. This would be faster if I could swing it. Yeah. I used to think about it as blocking, but I try not to because when I do that, I can get lazy with my execution of the shapes. So I really just try to think of the think of it compositionally rather than blocking. And I know it's just semantics at that point, but it just helps me to think of it that way. Even though we are doing, what is essentially blocking. Speed hacks. I mean, the easiest speed hack is to do really simplified drawings, like really, really simplified. Like there's a great interview with Sergio Aragones on YouTube where he talks about that in and of itself. That the speed is not necessarily the goal, but it is a result of those artistic choices made at the design point and the rendering point and the execution. Because he talks about in the video, he talks about when you're drawing an action comic, you draw these hands, you have to draw them very realistically. You have to get the proportions correct. You have to get the segments correct. You have to get the meat of the hand correct. Very technical term, meat. And then you have to show it doing something and render it and solidify it and do all the different things just to draw a hand. And he goes, when you do a cartoon instead of an action comic, the little hand can be like that. And it can still be expressive and do everything you need it to. But just by virtue of it being simpler, it's just faster. When he would draw like a Gru type character in the background, it would be just something like this. It's got like a little hat on, little, you know, and then that would be, and then it would be the expression that, really carries you through. And then it becomes like a storytelling piece, more like an emoji. I'd have to look back. I still thought that your turnarounds were still pretty complex if I'm remembering correctly. Um, but we'll keep working. Gotta get our Colonel Feathers here. Very distinguished penguin. Aren't all penguins distinguished? Our light source is forward, so it comes from here. So I mean, the design is one of the biggest hurdles of my career. As I let too much of that actiony BS creep in on my designs, and like my brain's telling me like, oh, you have to do it a certain way, when that's just not the case. And I'm hoping, now that I've really branched into doing my own stuff more, that I can let go of some of those hangups that I have. Because I really do like when my work gets a little bit more bouncy, cartoony like. That's a full color page in 30 minutes is a challenge. And actually, if I were to think about having to do a full color page in 30 minutes, I would just start with the color shapes. I would start with the color shapes, and then I would do the lines on top of it. That's how I would do it. And it would be more like a painting in that case. Um, Hey, Dr. Mask. I've got your book and I got your message. I got to drop that in the mail. I've got two things I got to put in the mail this week. I got that, and I got our turtle painting that we did together on the stream here. I got to get those two things in the mail this week. Getting ready for the show took a little bit more out of me than I thought it would. Doing shows in general, honestly, getting harder as I get older. Won't lie. The stress, everything involved with putting it together, bringing everything, making sure everything's not forgotten, and then the day of stuff, like not just being there, not just doing all the drawings, not just networking, not just getting there on time, not just setting up, not just it's also sometimes you run into these when you do enough shows for enough years. Even if you try to be nice to everyone, there's sometimes people that you don't want to run into for one reason or another. And um, Yeah, I had to run into a few of those people at this show where I just didn't. I would have rather enjoyed not running into them for varying degrees of reasons. Uh, what did I do after the show? After the show, they did have like an after party thing, but I don't generally go. Um, it's not because I don't like the show or anything like that. I just I have family in the area that I generally go visit, and I don't have a lot of time, so I try to say all my thank yous and show my appreciation at the show for being there and everything, and um, then I go to family stuff. Thank you for letting me pick y'all's brains. Oh, anytime. I'm happy to. And that's part of what the purpose of the drawing comics forum that'll be on my website is for. Like, I want to be able to have a place that's, not a stream so that at any time somebody can drop a message in there. And as I'm able to, or as other creators are there, they're able to help people, you know? Because I've done the drawing comics uh, panel for years, and this is, I think, a natural evolution for an at-home growth of that. Try to be diplomatic. I try to be nice to everybody, and I was nice to them even when they came up. But I would have rather just you know skipped that entirely. But the number of people I wanted to see vastly outnumbered the people I didn't want to see. So, and that's the absolute God's honest truth. Like getting to see Chris and everybody, Joe, Allison, all them folks. That's the good stuff. Jason, who I barely get to see. Celeste, his wife, the two folks that run the show, because obviously they're running around running a show, but it's always nice to see them. You know, Jim Talbot, one of my favorite people in the Boston comic scene, used to run the Boston Comic Con. You know, anytime I see him, give him a big hug. Because honestly, like some of those people are the ones that like when you start to figure out that you want to do this, you need people who support you. And Jimmy, for whatever reason, supported Jay and I. Like he picked us. Absolutely, that's correct. No place to run. Um, and he would always make sure that there was a spot for us at the show. When we first started, of course we paid for our spot, but like the Artist Alley spots at the old Boston Comic Con, if you weren't on the inside, you weren't getting the table. So we're moving along pretty well. We got our what is kind of our punchline and then our resolution because they kind of give each other a look like, haha, we got away with it. So we'll move up here. We'll work on another Colonel Feathers up there. And honestly, this is about how not as tight as I pencil anymore. And then you'll see when I do the inks that I do make other decisions. So if anybody came here just to check out the arts and pick up stuff that I got at the comic show, we already did that. So you can like just rewind and go back earlier and check out the artwork and books I picked up. And meeting Rick Parker was awesome because we chatted at the end of the show for probably about 15-20 minutes. I interacted with him online a little bit, but I'd never met him in person. And he was a absolute gentleman. I wish I had gotten to talk to his wife a little bit more because apparently she draws a ton of comics too. But she was over behind the table and busy. She worked on like the Morbius comics at Marvel and did the Barbie comics and all kinds of stuff and graphic novels out the wazoo. Um, Down here, you can see that there will be speech bubbles to connect you to the next thing. Like I want you to come down here. Out of the way. When you're reading, I want you to. Of course, that falls down. Follow the speech bubbles. You come down here, and here, and this you can. It's one of those where you can read it either before or after you read the next panel, and then this is a silent panel. That's the resolution. So, thinking about the balloon placement and where things are go. As far as the eye flow goes, the line of action, all that good stuff. When I'm speaking of the line of action, we mentioned that earlier. Here's where I intentionally have it going up and to the right, and then the lighting and the angle of the ship will bring you back down. It'll contain you, and you'll go up, and then you'll catch this speech balloon here, and then the tail will bring you back down. And then here, you'll hit this. This will be contained, and him talking. And then you'd see his reaction next, and then her reaction, because I want you to go like this, here, 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 here. You see this, you see this. Then you're going to pop over, and then you're going to read these balloons, and then you're going to come over here. This balloon is probably going to be right about here. It's going to curve in like this, curve the balloons in, and then you'll go back down to this one. You can either jump here or come straight into here, and then read this before here. It works in both. Down here. Michael says he's been trying to use less to say more with my drawing style, similar to Toth and Leon. Both two of my favorite artists. I actually have a Toth original I've shown off on the channel a few times, and I marvel at what he was able to deduce. But when you see it, when you see his pencil drawings, especially from the middle point of his career, he was drawing the structural stuff. It wasn't until later that he had done so much that he could just skip ahead and just skip all those. So, like, don't feel weird about putting down the construction lines. Like, if you need them, you need them, and that they have a purpose, and they don't have to be in the final result. Like, you see all these construction lines that are in here, all those are going away. Those are all getting erased. I'm going to pick out the appropriate lines that this needs to have the construction and containment that it needs to exist and function as a penguin operating the controls of a submarine like a penguin should. All penguins should be able to drive submarines. Yes. But especially for young artists, like, do the construction lines. You can practice without the construction lines, but I would highly recommend, until you're comfortable, just use them. Because I can draw without construction lines. It's just not as good. Maybe when I'm an old man and I've got years of alla prima drawings, as they're called. That's a daily drawing that, that's what Toth called them. That was just drawing with a marker on white paper every day. Draw heads, draw faces, do drills. Dr. Mass says leading the eye is so important. It is. It has to do with the pacing. Like, the amount of detail in the panels that I'm leading you through is intentional too. Like, where I strip detail away and where I pick it up more. Because I want there to be eye dwelling on this panel to try to take in everything you see around. Because the joke is noticing, as the reader and as the correlator, all this money. Like, you're both realizing in this panel, he's the everyman. And then we know that they know more than he knows, but they don't say what they know. because we as the reader already know, and they don't want the correlator to know. So in this mechanism, Jan, Colonel Feathers, and the reader are interacting together in the story, knowingly leaving out the correlator. I just think that that's how you weave like a story with the viewer reader as a part of it. You know, there are other ways to consider how the reader interacts with the story other than just having them break the fourth wall or wink, you know. It's knowing that they're in on something that another character isn't, knowing that the reader what the reader knows and what the some of the characters know and some of them don't. And that's more of a literary writing technique than it is with just comics. Like, you know, Dr. Mask. Oh, Martha says she's practicing drawing water with a pen. I feel like I should learn from drawing comic drawings, how to do water, because if I go from a photo, it won't do it proper way. Like it's need to learn the marble way first. Well, honestly, like you just have to crank up the contrast. Like if you're looking at a photo of water, convert it to black. To if you have Photoshop, go to Image, uh, Adjustments, convert to grayscale, and you'll see it in grayscale. But then go to your adjustments again and just crank up the contrast. And you can bring up, if you wanted to use curves, you could bring up more of the midtones as solid blacks. But when you crank up the contrast, you'll see exactly what is being abstracted by a comic book artist. Like it is taking away midtones because those are the domain of the colorist at that point. Like you can do some hatching or you can do some break lines, but like when I do water, it is really just cranking up the contrast. Dr. Mask, I watched Joe Sinnott draw a picture for me, and I don't think he even used an eraser. It was incredible. Joe Sinnott, like especially if you watched him after thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. Now, Mark, I got to know a little bit, and Joe a little bit. I actually hosted Joe's birthday panel at Rhode Island Comic Con one year, and Joe St. Pierre and I were the hosts for that, and we ended up hanging out afterwards and talking for a while. Joe has put in so many hours that he remembers how, and this is because Joe can draw. Joe can flat out draw, or could. The late Joe could. Um, but he also had this memory bank to where he remembered inking George Perez or Jack Kirby or John Byrne or Keith Pollard or Ron Frenz. And he remembered the shapes that they did, and he could mimic those shapes from memory. I mean, that's just practicing and practicing and practicing and drawing it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Like he was on Fantastic Four for basically everything except for the John Byrne run, and he did some of that, but John took over inking himself at a certain point. He even inked Bill Sienkiewicz for a little while on the FF. Believe it or not, that was early on in Maestro Bill's career. You guys know I'm a huge, huge Bill Sienkiewicz fan. One thing that I give myself the freedom to do in Undersea Hero is not explain everything. Hey, Martha's. Oh, it's not that people gave me crap. It's just that people with history that I would describe the conversations as having subtext. That would be the best way to put it. No, everybody was nice. Like I said, there's just people who I've known for a long. Like I've been doing conventions in New England since 2007. So what is that? Uh, almost 20 years. So 18 years. And a lot of the same artists are still there in every artist alley every year for every show in every region. So we all know each other. Just depends if we want to talk to each other, I guess. And those interactions from the yesteryears, I save those for take those to the grave. So I would never spill tea on someone like that over the interwebs. I think I got to raise up his chair just a little bit. And if that's the case, we got to raise it up extra so that we don't make a tangent. And actually, what that'll do is that'll cause a block, which is okay. What we'll just have to do is make sure that our speech balloon is in the right place so that we open it up and direct the eye how we want it. Like I said, the good vastly outweighed the less desirable. It wasn't even bad. It's just less desirable. I've only had a handful of like truly bad interactions at conventions. Only a handful in the, I've been doing conventions since I would say 2000 and probably 2001, 2002, so probably 25 years or so. And I've only had a handful of truly bad interactions. It was usually from uh, non-comic book reasons. So I'm gonna curve this a little bit more. I messed up my curve. There we go. That's better. It's 9:21. We're actually doing pretty well. If we can chunk out where the controls are going to go and then finish off a little over here, I think we'll be in good shape for the evening. So I'll be interested to see when these get colored. When I'm coloring them. And look, honestly, like when it comes to comics, as I've always said, it's a place for everybody. So it's if you're a nervous talker, like I can be sometimes, or if you freeze up, like I can also do sometimes, it's perfectly okay. Because comics and comic conventions should be for everybody. This one right here. Yeah, that's where that cushion is. So erase that, erase that. I'm sorry I missed that comment, Dr. Mask. Yes, Joe was special. And, it's interesting. I read an interview with Paul Levitz from when he was the chief over at DC Comics. And there was a point where DC was getting all of the hot Marvel artists. Like Frank Miller went there to do Ronin and Batman. John Byrne went there to do Superman. George Perez had already gone there to do Teen Titans and the Justice League. And later, like Crisis on Infinite Earths. And, he had said that one of the few artists that they didn't get was Joe Sinnott. And similarly, I read that Jim Shooter, with his, I would say, um, what's the best way to put it? I don't know if checkered is the right word, but I would say uh, we'll just say his colorful tenure as the EIC at Marvel, with all its triumphs and tragedies. Um, always said that the one artist that he didn't get from DC was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, which, I mean, I just, can you imagine what a Jose Garcia Lopez run on Spider-Man would look like? I mean, it just would have been. Martha says they once had a guy tell you that Story's fictional race was the Welsh and wouldn't take no for an answer. Wow. Yeah, I mean, art critics we have, one of the characters that people have told me time and time again that they do not like seeing me draw is the Hulk, and it's explicitly because of how I draw his hair, of all things. Yeah, I got lots of criticism over the years for when I would do a drawing. Someone would commission me, or someone would I would draw it for fun. If I drew the Hulk, it was his hair that they didn't like, which I don't know. We all run into those folks. So, but we also all have, I think, those people that are rooting for us, and you know, we get a balance of both. At least I hope it's just a bit of both, because if you get too much of one or the other, it can slow your progress, I guess, or you can get beat down by somebody being too mean, or you can get artificially propped up by somebody being too nice, or whatever. But you do need both. Like, you need people that are going to root for you, because it's hard. The daily grind is hard, man. And I got to see a lot of those people that have rooted for me at this show this past weekend, which which was great. And I know there are people that don't root for me, and that's just how it goes. I mean, um, Mike Vosberg said to me once, at any given moment, you are both the best and worst artist that someone has ever seen. And I like thinking about it because I can think about that from both sides of it at any time. Like if I'm not feeling down, I can be like, oh, I'm the worst artist they've ever seen. But if I'm feeling okay, I can be like, I'm probably the best artist they've ever seen. Especially if they're new. If they've never seen another comic artist, then by default, I am both the best and worst they've ever seen. And I do love that tea. It's not cheap tea. One of the things I also do at this point in the story is like even after getting punched in the face a bunch, the correlator is magically fine. He no longer has the broken teeth or nose or whatever as he gets back to his ship. Grab this hand a little bit, chunk it out. One of the things I have to do that helps me keep moving forward is sometimes I just have to put marks on the paper, even if they're the wrong marks. I gotta see something in order to fix it. And if it's still in my head, if I'm defeating myself from drawing on it, um, then I'll freeze. Then I can't ever fix it. It can't ever get better. So I don't have a name for the public domain project. I guess we'll sort that out as people hop on, or if it's just you, me, and the water cooler, it'll probably be Dimebox. But that was the name of the public domain book we did ages ago. But we'll see. I do know a couple of small publishers in the area. I could give them a call and see if they'd be interested in doing something with it. But, I figured we'd just do it for fun first and then see what happens. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do Kenton of Space Patrol, which was a Joe Kubert creation with Carmine Infantino for, I think it was either Hillman or Avon. I don't remember which company it was, but he's just absolutely a derivative of, well, I would say influenced. Derivative is cruel. So I would say that it was of the time of the Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon archetype with some interesting little nuggets thrown into it to make it a little different. Like, he's worked for a governing force, unlike Flash Gordon. And he loses his position as a policeman in the very first story. So, like, it's already got built in like a hopeful redemption arc in there. So, well, it's 9:30. I feel like we made pretty good progress for the night. There's our prelim. You can see how I made some changes to the type of face it was, the expression. You can see how I turned Jan's head more looking at Colonel Feathers and stuff. Well, I haven't even really started, so yeah, if it is what it is. Comic Fury. I don't know how I feel about that, but like I said, that's a bridge many miles up the road. So, but thank you everybody for coming tonight. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week. And as Michael says, if things are tough or not going great, I hope they get better for you soon. And hopefully, I'll see you next week. Good night, everybody. Thanks.